So a new case is up for Supreme Court review, and it's asking for the Supreme Court to immediately strike down Illinois' ban on so-called assault weapons and magazines. So let's talk about what is happening. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think these rifle and magazine bans need to be struck down nationwide, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to thank one of the main supporters and sponsors of this channel, which is Kershaw Knives. Kershaw makes some of the best knives available on the market if you're just looking for a quality EDC knife and you want something that is affordable and just simply works. I carry a Kershaw Iridium knife every single day for my EDC, and I cannot recommend their knives enough. And right now, if you go to their website and you order from Kershaw using the code 2024 Scholar40, you can get 40% off the MSRP of any order. Now, if there's already a discount applied to that, you will get up to 40% off if there's already some sort of deal on that. So just keep that in mind as well. So head on over to Kershaw Knives, use that code, and thank you again to Kershaw Knives for sponsoring and supporting this two-way content. As I mentioned in the intro, in this video, I have some good news for you in the current battle to strike down the state of Illinois, their ban on so-called assault weapons, and then also their magazine ban. There are now multiple cases which are once again going up to the United States Supreme Court, asking for the court to review and strike down these rifle and magazine bans. And now you have Gun Owners of America, or GOA, who has submitted their challenge to the Illinois rifle and magazine ban, and it's going up for Supreme Court immediate consideration. The case we're going to be focusing on in this video in the petition is in the case GOA versus Raul. Now, you may recall that recently we received news that the Supreme Court actually denied two emergency injunction requests, which were asking for the court there to put a temporary halt on the Illinois statewide rifle and magazine ban that was going to be put in place. Those cases we've talked about prior were the Colkins v. Pritzker case, and then also NAGR versus Naperville. In Colkins, after a state Supreme Court decision, the plaintiffs filed for a writ of cert to the United States Supreme Court, asking for the Supreme Court to intervene in that case. In the Colkins case, the plaintiffs also filed an additional emergency stay request, which was pending for Supreme Court review, and that went to Justice Barrett, who's responsible for emergency applications that come out of the Seventh Circuit. However, the Supreme Court denied both the request for the emergency stay and then later denied taking review of the case after they held conference back in January. The second case that was denied an emergency request was the NAGR case that was seeking emergency stay requests and emergency interventions, but the Supreme Court denied review in those cases. But then also we had the Seventh Circuit en banc panel deny review in a bunch of cases that were pending before them and were seeking Seventh Circuit en banc panel review. The Seventh Circuit en banc panel did not want to intervene in these cases at all. You had the Seventh Circuit three-judge panel that issued an improper decision, and so the Seventh Circuit kind of at large was avoiding this issue, did not want to faithfully apply Bruin or Heller, and kicked these cases back down to the lower court, to the lower court Judge McGlynn. He has most of these cases right now, which are sitting in front of him for review. This GOA case started at the lower court level in front of Judge McGlynn, who struck down the Illinois ban with a preliminary injunction. The state of Illinois then appealed that injunction up to the Seventh Circuit, and on review, a three-judge panel of the most anti-gun judges removed the preliminary injunction, and they essentially ruled in favor of the state of Illinois. In coming to that decision, the Seventh Circuit three-judge panel used an analysis that did not align with either Heller's common use test or the recent 6-3 decision in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin case. Instead, the Seventh Circuit concluded that the arms protected by the Second Amendment do not include weapons that may be reserved for military use. So what the Seventh Circuit three-judge panel did there is they used a test known as the military use test. And they said that because these items could be used in military service or had some sort of tie to military service, the state of Illinois could place restrictions on them and pretty much just outright ban them. This is the same test that was used by the Fourth Circuit in the Bianchi v. Frosch case, which is now currently up also for Supreme Court consideration. So not only are there cases coming out of Illinois that are challenging the military use test, but then you also have the Maryland Bianchi case, which is doing the same thing. Now, in the GOA case, the question presented to the Supreme Court for consideration is very simply whether Illinois and the categorical ban on millions of the most commonly owned firearms and ammunition magazines in the nation, including the AR-15 rifle, violates the Second Amendment. That is a very simple and straightforward question that GOA is asking for the Supreme Court to answer and to issue a decision on. In the petition, GOA goes on to point out that this issue is also bigger than just these bans on rifles and magazines. It's not just a constitutional question. There's also a bigger, broader issue about lower courts outright defying what the Supreme Court said in Bruin and Heller. GOA states in the petition that preferring its own decision in Friedman versus the City of Highland Park to this court's precedents, the Seventh Circuit flatly rejected the notion that the Second Amendment extends prima facie to all instruments that constitute bearable arms. Rather, according to the panel's majority, the Second Amendment only presumptively protects purportedly civilian weaponry, while other weapons can be dedicated exclusively to military use. The majority reached this Heller-defying and text-defying conclusion by rejecting this court's determination that there must be a link, a logical connection, between the Second Amendment's prefatory and operative clauses. In fact, the majority claimed just the opposite, that Heller somehow severed that connection between the two clauses. Unsurprisingly, the majority did not explain how the founders' permeating fear of standing armies, like the one they had just defeated, is compatible with the notion that they would voluntarily and intentionally subjugate themselves to possession of only second-class civilian weaponry that would make their future ability to resist tyranny impractical, if not impossible. GOA concludes this section by stating that the Seventh Circuit's decision demonstrates a continuing refusal to allow this court's Second Amendment precedents and manifests a continued distaste for, if not hostility towards, the people's right to keep and bear arms. Moreover, because many other states have enacted similar bans like Illinois, the panel majority's reasoning is a virus that may spread if not promptly eliminated by this court. Again, this is not just about striking down these rifle bans and magazine bans, and GOA is pointing that out. This is also about striking down the defiance of Heller and Bruen that a lot of these lower courts are currently engaged in. Now, the biggest hurdle for some of these cases right now, especially coming out of Illinois, are the fact that many of these are just at an interlocutory posture. They are, reviews of grantings or denials of preliminary injunctions. So they're not final merits reviews. And traditionally, Supreme Court does not like, to review interlocutory cases. They like final merit reviews and circuit splits, and that's traditionally when the Supreme Court will get involved in these cases, so it's kind of an uphill battle. But GOA tries to overcome that hurdle by arguing that after Heller, there were a lot of lower courts that went unchecked and outright defied that decision, and that went unchecked and caused a lot of issues that the Supreme Court tried to cure with Bruen. And now in a post-Bruen world, there are similar actions by states and lower courts, and the same thing is happening. And if gone unchecked once again, we will see the Second Amendment get relegated once again to a second-class right that the Supreme Court just tried to cure with Bruen. GOA states that post-Bruen, many courts are again in search of the most expedient ways to avoid this court's holdings and frustrate the right to keep and bear arms. Some are seemingly in competition for the prize of most unfaithful opinion. Old habits die hard, it would seem. So that the Second Amendment is not again relegated to a second-class status, it is vital that this court not to allow the nation to return to the type of lower court defiance that followed Heller. As Justice Alito and Thomas made clear just last month in a different context, erroneous reasoning by lower courts is a virus that may spread if not promptly eliminated. The Seventh Circuit has decided an important federal question in a way that conflicts with multiple relevant decisions of this court. Similar deeply flawed decisions are beginning to sprout up in other circuits as well. This case presents an ideal vehicle to stop the problem from spreading further and prevent this court's Bruen decision from being treated with the same disrespect as was shown for a decade after the court's decision in Heller. So those are really awesome arguments from GOA. They're pointing out not just the issue with these rifle and magazine bans, how they, do not comply with Heller and Bruen, how they violate the Second Amendment, but also they're pointing to the defiance of the lower courts and how this needs to go checked by the Supreme Court. They cannot just let these lower courts run rampant, use different analysis, and once again, just kind of do what they did after Heller. Now, I also want to note that there are still multiple cases going on in the lower courts. GOA's case is one of those. Like I said, a bunch of these cases were sent down after they were denied Seventh Circuit en banc review, where they were sent back down to lower court Judge McGlynn. Again, they're being reviewed. He's trying to build, factual evidence and reach an ultimate merits review. He did state in multiple conferences that he is not going to halt those cases. He's not going to stay the review of these lower court cases right now. Even though there are a bunch of petitions in these same cases that are going up the Supreme Court, the lower court judge there, McGlynn, is not going to hold these cases. He's going to try to decide them unless ultimately the Supreme Court decides, yes, they're going to grant review to one of these cases. Then at that time, maybe he would put a halt on them. But right now, he is moving forward at the lower court level. So another case going up to the Supreme Court, asking for the Supreme Court to strike down the state ban on rifle magazines, and then also to strike down lower court defiance. You have a bunch of Illinois cases going up to Supreme Court, and you also have that Marilyn Bianchi case. So very important, really interesting. If anything changes, if anything else develops, I will let you guys know. Also, if you like this video and you like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of 2A news. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and never forget, this nation was built by ARM scholars, and this nation will be maintained by ARM scholars.